What's up, it's Cinema Shogun here, and oddly enough, we have been hearing a lot from the BTK killer. And you know, his story is one that I've looked into years ago. And honestly, it's one that I tried to lock in the back of my mind. I never want to see or think about this guy again or the details of what he did to those people. But recently, while covering the Bryan Kohberger case, the BTK killer has come out as a prominent figure in this case because he's constantly providing his thoughts and opinions on this case, which is wild. And I still to this day, I don't think people have let this sink in, that we have a serial killer from jail providing commentary to active true crime cases. But that's what's happening with the BTK killer. He's been reached out to by several media outlets. I've made several videos on this channel and on my second channel. If you haven't watched them, check it out. Because the BTK killer opens up and talks about Bryan Kohberger a lot. Well, it just so happens that the BTK killer has found himself in the headlines again, which is kind of disturbing. But this time it's not because of Bryan Kohberger. Oh no. This time it's because of something worse. Because law enforcement and investigators believe that they may be able to link him to another missing persons case. That's right. Years after being arrested, years after being behind bars. And you know, BTK, he kind of admitted and went into detail about a lot of the things he did. But investigators are now trying to link him to another crime. And to think that we are here in 2023 and the BTK killer is still relevant because there's still unsolved and cold cases out there that look like they could possibly be tied to him. But it's a weird situation because he's admitted to a lot. So I don't know why he wouldn't admit to this, but let's go ahead and dive right into this article. But first, I'm giving away a couple of copies of Hogwarts Legacy. Go down to the pinned comment, follow me on Twitter, follow the rules in my pinned comment on Twitter or my pinned tweet for your chance to win. But let's go ahead and dive into this article. The BTK serial killer is back on police radar, but this time we're told it's to see if he has any connection to the disappearance of an Oklahoma teenager back in 1976. BTK, real name Dennis Rader, tells TMZ he was interviewed January 20th by Osage County Sheriff Eddie Verdon and 3 other investigators at El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas. That's where BTK is serving 10 life terms for killing 10 people from 1974 to 1991. He was captured in 2005 after sending police taunting letters using the moniker bind, torture, kill. Rader said the Osage County cops wanted to know if he was involved in the disappearance of the 16-year-old Cynthia Dawn Kinney in Pawhuska, Oklahoma. I'm sure I butchered that. On June 23, 1976. Kinney was reportedly last seen leaving Osage Laundromat and getting into a beige 1965 Plymouth Belvedere with two people under suspicious circumstances. No one has been arrested. BTK said police thought he might have a connection to the Kinney case because he was actively committing murders in Wichita, Kansas during that time frame. Wichita is only about a 2-hour drive to Pawhuska. BTK also said cops asked him about his connection to Oklahoma and the Boy Scouts. BTK admitted he was in Oklahoma as a Boy Scout, but for several years before and after 1976. BTK categorically denied any involvement in the Kinney case. Sheriff Verdon confirmed to TMZ he and the other investigators visited BTK in prison to interview the serial killer in a roundabout way regarding the Kinney case. Verdon said investigators were pursuing leads and doing their due diligence to see if BTK fits into the Kinney case, considering his criminal activities around the time. Verdon said there's similarities between the time frames she disappeared in daytime. Most of BTK's stuff occurred in daytime hours. Some of the stuff that motivated BTK, there are similarities. During the interview, Verdon said he also gathered personal information from BTK about his early life, military service, and his crimes. Birding ended with this. There's additional research going to be done to either rule BTK in or out. So in like a weird way, I don't know how many of you all have seen the movie The Silence of the Lambs. You know how they kind of consult with Hannibal Lecter and he's trying to help them solve crimes? It seems like that's what BTK has turned into. The real life equivalent of like Hannibal Lecter, where news outlets, media outlets, people, college professors, law enforcement, they all reach out to this dude and talk to this dude, trying to figure things out. Now, one thing I think is really cool about this is that they're still trying to find out what happened to this woman who went missing in 1976. I always find it cool, and I can't really describe the words, but isn't it kind of like crazy and interesting how investigators in modern day are still looking into things that happened decades ago? So I always find that interesting. And what leads? How do you investigate a case that's from 1976? You know what I mean? Like, I understand DNA and various things like that, but how do you follow up with leads? How do you conduct interviews and interrogations? Like, where do you go with information that is that old? So I find that very interesting. But as far as the BTK goes, he's BTK. I mean, I don't want to sit here and say I trust the guy, but I mean, the dude's kind of come out and said a lot of the things that he's done. So I would think that maybe he would just acknowledge that he did this as well. Maybe he wants to send them through a loop. Maybe he has nothing to do with it. Maybe he does. But at the very least, it's kind of creepy knowing that there's still, possible missing people or dead people that could be tied to this dude that we don't even know about yet. And we already know of like 10. So who knows what the BTK killer has going on, man. But the fact that they pulled up on him and they're asking him questions, trying to tie him to things that happened back in the day, I do find it very interesting, and I wonder what will come of this. I hope they find some answers for this lady's family or just in general. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments while you're down there. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe, ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all in the next video.